Alrighty, so on Tuesday we talk about the New York Red Bulls and talk about their legacy of failures and also the amount of playoff futility that they have suffered and just time after time of heartbreak to finally found themselves back to MLS Cup. Well, today we're going to talk about the LA Galaxy and themselves also has faced a ton of adversity to get themselves back into this stage, and that's crazy to say for a team that has the most ever MLS Cup and they're going to be appearing in their 10th MLS Cup this year, which is the most out of any team in MLS. You would not have think that this team has gone through a lot to get to this stage. But when you look at this decade long struggle that the Galaxy has had ever since their last MLS Cup appearance and their last MLS Cup win against the New England Revolution in 2014, I mean, it's been an absolute roller coaster ride that also had periods where it was really the darkest time that the Galaxy has ever had in franchise history. Now, we start off with what happened in 2015. So this is a year where they of course are the defending MLS Cup champion coming off of an MLS Cup win and a record fifth MLS Cup win. But this is kind of where we started to see some of the core pieces of those Galaxy Dynasty year start to go away. To be fair, some of them were started to go away. You know, we saw David Beckham left this team in 2012, but 2014, another major piece left that Galaxy team that was part of the dynasty that they had in the late 2000s and into the early 2010s. Obviously, Landon Donovan decided to retire that season. But still, that being said, you know they do still get some notable signings throughout the season. They brought in Giovanni Dos Santos and Steven Gerrard, and both of those signings, yeah, let's just say it definitely has not worked out for the Galaxy, especially with the DP that they of course has had. I mean, GDS kind of had at least a little bit of success in maybe his first two seasons, but yeah, after that it was an absolute albatross off a contract. And then Steven Gerrard is kind of signaling the beginning of the end when it comes to these age-old European superstar player that come to MLS for one last paycheck. And again, back then, you know, the league has really labeled it as a retirement league because there's a lot of big name players that have come to MLS to get one last paycheck. And while at times it was relatively successful and those guys can really carry the team, you can sort of see the quality is got to a point where you know some of these teams aren't just going to simply rely on these guys to get them over the top. I mean, it will definitely help them, but for the most part, we're starting to see the league is moving away from that retirement league kind of mentality, and really, it pretty much got is completely. I mean, I know there are still some notable players that have come here to MLS to get one last paycheck, but it's not a league anymore where we see before where it's super really rely on that to really as a way to generate success for a team to go into the playoffs or even go all the way to MLS Cup. But in that season, they did finish in fifth place with 14-9-11 record and finished with 51 points, and that's kind of a down season for the Galaxy because you know before that they had some really good season even following an MLS Cup. You know, you would always say that whenever team win an MLS Cup. They might have a bit of a hangover, that is, but for the Galaxy, with the way that they kind of dominate doing the early 2010s, it seems like MLS Cup hangover isn't there. It was kind of a little surprising and you know a little disappointing that they didn't finish as well as they did in previous season, and then of course they got eliminated by the Seattle Sounders in the first round by a 3-2 scoreline. I believe that was a Sounders team that had some really good players. I believe Clint Dempsey and Oberferi Martins was still on that Sounders team back then. Now, looking at 2016, and this is really kind of where the beginning of the end really they started for this Galaxy team. This was kind of maybe the what you could say the last hurrah in terms of the old core and really the legendary head coach of Bruce Arena that have guided this team to multiple MLS Cup appearance and winning those trophies as well. But in the last hurrah, it was not a bad season. They finished third in the standings with a 12-16-6 record and finished with 52 points. But unfortunately, they got eliminated by the Colorado Rapids, and they actually got eliminated in a really close two-legged affair. That two-legged affair actually went all the way to a PK shootout in the second leg, but Colorado was able to win that PK show, mainly because you know they had a guy called Tim Howard in goal, and this was before Tim Howard just completely fall a cliff with the Rapids the very next season. But like I said, this is really kind of the beginning of the end for the Galaxy dynasty that they had in the late 2000s and into the 2010s. This is the final season for Bruce Arena in charge of the Galaxy, and this is also the final season for some legendary player like Robbie Keane, Janino, and Omar Gonzalez. And I will also say that they definitely did bring some interesting signing as well. Ashley Cole, Nigel DeYoung, and then we also saw the return of Mike McGee that meant a lot to this team. Two very underrated player, considered one of the more underrated player in MLS history, and then the return of Landon Donovan, who decided to come out of retirement and play for the final couple of months of the season. And again, just they were hoping that they're gonna do one last hurrah and see if they can win one last championship, maybe their sixth MLS Cup before they might have to seriously think about retool. And yeah, it didn't work out. And in the following season, it was really kind of the not only the retool season, but really the turning of the page, and it did not go so well. I mean, it was an absolute disaster to a point where the Galaxy just completely fall off the map. I mean, they finished 11 in the standings, finished with an 8-8-18 record, finished with 32 points. That is one of the lowest points total that the Galaxy has ever had. In fact, I think that is the lowest points total that the Galaxy has had if you do not include the COVID shortened season that we saw in 2020. And not only the fact that they did not make it to the playoffs, but they also finished as the team that has the worst record in the league, which means they did win the wooden spoon. That's the first time that they ever had in franchise history, and also ended the 8 season playoff streak that goes all the way back to 2008. And to tell you how much of a disaster it was, again, it's not just the personnel that really put that team to just completely fall off the map. It's also the coaching too. I mean, we always knew that the transition between Bruce Arena to the next head coach for the Galaxy was always going to be tough. But yeah, they definitely hit a huge dud when they decided to hire Kurt Onofor as the replacement. And not only the fact that he did a bad job there. He did so bad that he only lasted 4 months in the job, and I remember Galaxy fans were basically calling for his head, even before when we get to July when he eventually was unceremoniously let go by this team and was also replaced by Ziggy Schmidt in July. And I think part of that thinking is that they were hoping that bringing another legendary head coach like Ziggy Schmidt can solve the problem, and no, it did not, because in the following season they finished in seventh place with a 13-9-12 record, so a little bit better. But I'll tell you how that finish really ended in just an absolute heartbreak kind of season, and really kind of the beginning of some really strings of heartbreak that the Galaxy have suffered in Decision Day as well. They finished with 48 points, did not make it to the playoffs. That was also the debut season of Zlatan. Obviously, we will never forget the incredible debut that he has. Probably go down as one of the greatest debut we have ever seen in MLS history. In fact, maybe even the best debut we have ever seen in MLS history, with Zlatan announcing himself not only to the Galaxy but also to the league itself with that comeback win against LAFC and El Trafico. But obviously, the Ziggy Schmidt, who of course took over this team, he only lasted barely a year as he was stepped down as the head coach. Obviously, this was back when he started to have some health issue, and sadly, eventually he did pass away just a couple of years later. So they were replaced by Dominic Kidner, and yeah, they had a chance to make it to the playoffs on the final day of this season, and probably should have done so, but they blew a 2-0 lead against the Houston Dynamo. And this was not just any Houston Dynamo. This was a Dynamo team that I believe they had not won a single road game up to that point. So the fact that they blew a 2-0 lead at home to a team that have not won a road game in the season. Well, actually, I think they probably won one. But still, it's absolutely inexcusable. And again, this is just kind of the beginning of some really heartbreaking losses that the Galaxy suffer on decision day, that really kind of just even in a season where I think it's kind of a bit of a success that they got themselves back to where they sort of were. The fact that they weren't able to make it to the playoffs, and the way that they did it, just utter disappointment. Now, in the very next year, the good news is they made it back to the playoffs. They finished in fifth place with a 16-3-15 record, and finished with 51 points. Guillermo Barros Scaleto was hired as the new head coach of this team. Zlatan had an incredible year as well. I believe he was very close in terms of winning the Golden Boot as well, but unfortunately, they couldn't overcome LAFC in the playoffs. And I know, obviously, as I'll talk about uh, them reaching to MLS Cup against the Red Bulls, some people will say, well, the Galaxy didn't really have to overcome their demons against LAFC. Well, yes, but it's not their fault. The fact that LAFC didn't win against Seattle and set up a potential El Trafico in the Western Conference final, but still, in that year they weren't able to overcome LAFC. And keep in mind that was a really good LAFC team as well. That team went on to win the supporter show and was just kind of steamrolling people at times. And the Galaxy put up a good fight in that one, but ultimately lose in classic El Trafico scoreline of 5-3. And as I mentioned, this was the last year that Zlatan was with this team. He departed at the end of the season. So after them finally getting themselves back to relevance for the first time in a couple of years, you're thinking, well, how are they going to follow that up? Well, they follow that up by not making the playoffs and had a disastrous season once again. They finished in 10th place with a 6-4-12 record and finished with 22 points. Guillermo Scaleto was ousted at the end of the season as a result. And not only the fact it was a disastrous season in the league, but it was a disastrous season in terms of the MLS's back tournament. I mean, they finished dead last with just 1 point to their name. They also absolutely got smoked in that MLS's back tournament against LAFC when they lost 6-2 in that game. But the good news is this is when Chicharito, of course, joined the team. And again, the Galaxy, it's almost given that they have to have a big name player on this team. That's kind of the Galaxy philosophy, and Chicharito is the latest player that is a big name player that has come to this team and at least trying to put butts in the seat and and trying to maybe turn the fortune of this Galaxy team. That again, this is still in the midst of a downturn period for the Galaxy, probably one of the worst its proud franchise history. So the very next year, they were hoping to make it to the playoffs. And to be fair, it was not actually not a bad season for the Galaxy. If you look at the first half of the season, they actually was doing very well in the first half of the season. But then the second half of the season happened, and in the second half of the season, they had that massive collapse where they won two of their last 14 games to really just kickstart an epic collapse, an epic meltdown that the Galaxy has had. And to sum up how big of a collapse this was, the Galaxy did not fall below the red line all season until the final day of the season. And I think it's also fitting that in an epic collapse that they had in the second half of the season, it will also signal in terms of some more major disappointment on decision day. But they finished in eighth place with 13-9-12 record, finished with 48 points. And that Greg Vanney, of course, was named the new head coach after Guillermo Barros was let go, but even him wasn't able to get this massive collapse over, and that they drew free to Minnesota to get eliminated on the final day of the season. And I just remember in that game, they had the lead multiple time in that game, but only to for well, actually, did they have multiple lead in the game? I kind of almost forgot because that was such an epic game, and I think the only big member I remember in that game is Greg Vanny basically putting the number one goal that his team needed, even though his team clearly needs to win the game. And yeah, obviously an absolute meltdown that they of course has had, and some people we were immediately calling for Vanny had after that season too. Now, obviously, the Galaxy didn't fire Greg Vanny, and I think part of that is maybe they were hoping they give him another chance compared to what we saw with Guillermo Barros Scaleto. And overall, in the end, I think sticking with Greg Vanny was the right choice, even though there's times that Greg Vanny has made some mistake. You got to remember, this is still during a time when the Galaxy were trying every way to get back to relevance, and some of the signings that they made, while it worked out on the attacking end mostly, the defensive problem that they had really throughout out this time was still all to be seen. But in 2022, they did get themselves finally back into the playoffs for the first time in 2 years, finishing in fourth place with 14-8-12 record and finished with 50 points. But unfortunately, they cannot escape LAFC in the the playoffs, and once again it's deja vu to what we saw in 2019, losing to them in the second round. This time by a closer scoreline. It was a 3-2 loss. But what's so heartbreaking about that loss is they gave up a goal in the 90th minute in that game, and they, even though they were very competitive in that game, yeah, giving a 90th minute goal, that has to hurt this team, just unable to overcome their intercity rival once again in the playoffs. But it's also kind of interesting to note that that season also brought in some players that are definitely key core players of this Galaxy team right now. Notable signing include Mark Delgado, Gaston Brugman, Douglas Costa, and Ricky Puig. And most of those players, of course, were key contributor in terms of what the Galaxy team is right now. Although just don't look at Douglas Costa and that just don't look at that name in terms of turning out to be one of the biggest, if not arguably the biggest bust we have ever seen in MLS history. And it's one that I will also would say that everybody saw coming before the signing was even made. Like everybody knew that Douglas Costa was going to be an absolute bust for the Galaxy, and yeah, it's safe to say that he not only was, but he only played well. I think near the end of his time with the Galaxy when his contract was running down. I guess maybe that was just kind of him seeing if the Galaxy can maybe fall into that bait of decide to re-sign him again and once again swallow up already was a bad contract. Obviously, the Galaxy front office did not take that bait, and he was rightfully let go after this season as well. But then we look at 2023, or actually not this season, but I think it was actually the following season that they decided to let go of him. But in 2023, yeah, this is when we saw just a chaotic season for the Galaxy, where up to this point, one of the main reason why the Galaxy has had this big downturn is the front office, and mostly their president Chris Klein has really just kind of ruined this team, make some very questionable signings that have pretty much put this team being stuck between at times being competitive but not good enough to get themselves back to the glory days that they had. So the fans basically said that yeah, we had enough of him. So the supporter group basically decided to protest in the beginning of the season. They demand the Galaxy to fire Chris Klein, and that protest really had an effect in terms of the on-field play as well, because the Galaxy started off the worst ever start that they have in franchise history with 7 game winless run. Now eventually, they did finish. They play better as the season goes along, but still, yeah. When you start 7 games without a win, unless you're gonna have a Sporting KCS kind of incredible turnaround as what we saw from Sporting KC 2 seasons ago, you're most likely not gonna make it to the playoffs. But eventually, with the whole supporter group drama and also the drama in terms of the fans really want Chris Klein to get the axe. They finally got their wish, and this I think is really the turning point for this Galaxy team, and maybe the main reason why this team is back to where they are today. The firing of Chris Klein was a long time coming, and that not only it was ending the protest that we saw in May after he was relieved of his duty, but this is when the Galaxy started to be playing well again. Now they did have a downturn in the latter part of the season. Maybe that's mainly due to the fact that they kind of ran out of gas a little bit. But it seems like things were going to go well with this team, especially now that they finally let go of really the one of the main cause of the downturn that the Galaxy has had for these past decades or so. Because in 2024, not only they decided to get a new president in Wilkins, and how he's done an incredible job with this team, and especially some of the signings that they had. But the Galaxy was surely back, because in 2024 they finished in second position. Probably could have finished first if they didn't had more decision day heartbreak against the Houston Dynamo, which in hindsight, as heartbreaking that was, it worked out for the Galaxy with the way that LAFC weren't able to make it into the conference final. Weren't able to overcome Seattle in the conference semifinal, but they finished with a second position with a 19-7-8 record. They finished with 64 points, and they're about to have their showdown against the New York Red Bulls on Saturday, and looking to lift a record 6 MLS Cup in league history. And to highlight what we've seen in this season, this was the most point and the highest the Galaxy have finished since 2011, We saw some more key signings to really mesh of what has been an incredible deadly attack. I mean, we already know that this Galaxy attack had some good players like Ricky Puig and Dejan Jovic pulling the string, but now adding the likes of Painso and Peck, two guys that has had an incredible season, and a guy that most likely could be winning the newcomer of the year, that is Gabriel Peck. Yeah, it also so kind of helps the fact that their defense, even though it was a little bit sloppy at times, it definitely they locked down throughout this playoffs. And again, that attack. I mean, this playoffs. It's quite crazy to see, especially in the first 3 games of the playoffs, how they just absolutely run people over. Like they outscore their opponent 15-2 in the first 3 games. Now, obviously, in the last game against the Sounders, they had to work hard to do so, but that was mainly because the Sounders they were going to try the same game plan that they had against LAFC, and in many ways, it kind of worked out really well with the way that the Galaxy was having problem in terms of creating chances and trying to break down a really deep low block the Sounders was putting. But ultimately, they were able to get get past that because again, one of their big four, and Jovic comes up with the big goal, and then the winning assist by Ricky Puig, playing with a torn ACL in the last 30 minutes to get to this point. Yeah, it's safe to say that it's been a long time coming, and I think Galaxy fans are probably very happy the fact that they're finally back to where they belong. I mean, I think in general, I know there are going to be some people that don't like to see the Galaxy back to where they are, but I think in general, the league is better when the Galaxy are competitive. This team has always considered to be the pinnacle in terms of MLS, even during the early days as well. And it's kind of sad to see how much they fall off in the decade long, but that could all come to an end if they can win that MLS Cup against the Red Bulls. Especially, they are going to be favorites too. I mean, I know they're not going to have Ricky Puig in this game, and I'll talk about tomorrow in the preview how big of an impact that could be, but they are definitely the favorites considering they have never lost a game this season, and the health sports part, they're still perfect so far this season, and with the way that they're just running over in the playoffs like that, they're going to be favorites of lifting their sixth MLS Cup and maybe causing more pain and more torture to a Red Bulls team that is looking to finally end their legacy of failure, and finally get to the mountaintop that they've been looking for so long on that Saturday MLS Cup final. But as I said before, we'll talk about that game tomorrow, and certainly there's going to be a lot of storyline heading in to this MLS Cup that I'll talk about tomorrow as well. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.